We are living in an age where spiritual identity theft is running rampant. As much as I'd love to make some casual comments about certain groups of people running around claiming to be real news outlets, that would be too easy to expose. Even the most gullible among us should be able to recognize some imposters after a few decades, especially when they run promotional ads about themselves telling you how trustworthy they are. It would also be too easy to expose people that claim to be authorities when it comes to science, when most of us can spot their biases and illogical reasoning. What we really need is to trace all of these minor and secondary identity thieves back to the ultimate father of all identity thieves, the devil himself. To do this, you need a Bible. If you are hoping that your friends at school or coworkers or relatives are going to bring up this subject, then you are probably going to remain ignorant about this. It's the Bible that tells you that Satan wants to be like God. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Notice that he didn't say the opposite of the Most High. If you are looking for someone who would be the exact opposite of God, then you'll never identify him. The devil wants you to be confused and mistake him for God. It's not a case of where the good guy wears a white hat and the bad guy wears a black hat. The devil wouldn't be that obvious, and he wouldn't look that sinister. You don't try to trick someone with counterfeit money by giving them something that is obviously not money. You give them something that looks like the real thing. The best way to train a bank teller is to not waste their time studying counterfeit money. No, the best way to train them is to have them get so familiar with the real thing that when a counterfeit shows up, they'll notice that something doesn't quite look right. If you are in tune with the real thing, when a counterfeit shows up, it catches your eye. And upon further examination, it can be set aside and labeled fake. This is why we need a good Bible. The more we spend time in God's Word, we'll be able to spot when a counterfeit shows up, trying to look like the legitimate real thing. We Christians used to be looking forward to the return of Jesus, but lately, a bunch of so-called Christians have gotten a bunch of gullible people to be on the lookout for the Antichrist instead. We aren't supposed to be looking for him because he gets revealed after we are out of here. And by the way, he won't appear looking like this. No one would follow him if he did, except for a few heavy metal fans. No, he will be part of a great peace process. A man of peace. He will slowly become a Messiah figure and world leader. And whatever happens and whatever he does will be a counterfeit. It's all identity theft. And the Antichrist will have his own prophet. This false prophet will be given counterfeit power. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. The Antichrist will be quite the Hollywood and news media darling and celebrity, and then one day he will receive a deadly wound in his right arm and his right eye. And we see that in Zechariah chapter 11, verse 17. Woe to the idle shepherd that leaveth the flock! The sword shall be upon his arm and upon his right eye. His arm shall be clean dried up, and his right eye shall be utterly darkened. Now the pagans have known about this for centuries. This is why they talk about their false god Odin giving up his right eye for knowledge. And since the idea of Odin goes all the way back to the days of Nimrod, and Nimrod's son will be worshipped as Baal, then it's no surprise that Baal would take on many of the same attributes as his father. That's why in a recent movie they had the character Thor replace Odin, but who really cares? This eye injury that is going to befall the Antichrist is what the ancients have always referred to as the Eye of Horus. And because the book of Revelation tells us that that wounded eye was a deadly wound, we predict that this will be the funeral of the century. And boy, will the world mourn for their deceased world leader. The religious smooth talkers will give emotional speeches, and all eyes will be on the casket. Some soft music will play, perhaps even a moment of silence. But meanwhile, we true Bible-believing Christians will be in heaven, and we get to witness a war break out. We'll get to see Satan as a red dragon stir up some of the angels to join him. And as Michael the archangel says to the devil, "Let you and I step outside." And the devil is kicked out of heaven, and he takes a third of those angels with him, and he heads back down to earth. And about the time that the king of the bottomless pit comes up, we are about to have a meeting of the minds, so to speak. The king of the pit comes up, and the devil comes down, and they meet inside the body of the man of peace. And that dead body becomes animated again. And just as the news media is about to go to a commercial break, all of a sudden the casket opens up better than any vampire special effect, and out steps the man of peace. Although he's no longer really the man of peace, he's the revealed Antichrist. And will he ever have some big changes in store for the whole world? His whole supposed resurrection from the dead is a counterfeit of the real thing. You're dealing with the king of identity theft. But no Christian, before the catching away, will have to deal with him. If you've been waiting your whole life to see these events take place, well, you're in for some serious disappointment. Instead, we Christians will have to deal with the spirit of Antichrist, which is already in the world. We have to deal with tares. Now, to make a spiritual application of this subject, we Christians are basically the wheat, and there are counterfeit Christians that walk among us. And sadly, these counterfeit Christians try to speak for us and represent us to the whole people of the world. So when they do stupid things or act worldly, the world notices them and says, "Oh, so that's a Christian. They don't seem to be holy or act holy, so why should I?" And on many levels, the counterfeit Christians seem to be enjoying worldly things more than the lost souls. They aren't familiar with this verse. Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. This idea of identity theft didn't pop up one day all of a sudden with credit cards and the internet. The Bible has always been warning you about this subject. Beware of false prophets which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. How many of us Christians have been caught off guard by our supposed friends and allies? I'm not talking about how we sheep butt heads with each other from time to time. Being sheep, we sometimes often butt heads with each other over little things like who's more important and who gets to go first. But that's nothing compared to the wolves and their spiritual identity thievery. And not only does this happen with our peers and fellow colleagues, but the Apostle Paul warned us, "For I know this, that after my departing shall grievous wolves enter in among you, not sparing the flock." Many wolves are teaching in seminaries. Many wolves are volunteering to look after your children while you are too busy doing your own thing. Many wolves are singing uplifting songs on the radio and in the worship service. But maybe you haven't been bitten by these wolves yet. Maybe you are still trying to fit in with them. After all, we're supposed to try and get along with everybody, right? Maybe we can reason with them. Surely there's a little good in all of us. But no matter how pure your motives are, it will not work in the long run, because that spiritual identity thief will not be satisfied with just pulling the wool over your eyes. If you crave the world's attention, well, don't worry. They have big plans for you. Beware of the smooth-talking ministers. Instead, get closer to God and not closer to the world, because one day the mask will come off